Thank you so much. Can everyone hear me at the back? Brilliant. I'm, as introduced there, Gemma Walker, Wilder Communities Manager for Norfolk Wildlife Trust. I've been with the Trust for 20 years, and when I started working for the Trust, already with the Churchyard Conservation Scheme had been going for sort of 15 plus years then. So churchyards have been really an important part of Norfolk Wildlife Trust for a long, long time. So I'm really aware I'm in the situation of being the slot just before lunch. Okay, so I will hopefully make sure I don't overrun because I don't want to have any negative points against me as well. But that 2030 has been mentioned a few times, and for Norfolk Wildlife Trust and the Wildlife Trust as a whole, it's also a very important year for us. By 2030, we want 1 in 4 people taking action for wildlife, and that's across the whole movement. We've got 26 wildlife trusts across the UK, and we're all aiming that 1 in 4 people taking action. Now, why 1 in 4? 1 in 4 is seen as a tipping point. If you can get 25% of people doing something, it suddenly becomes visible. It suddenly becomes the norm. You can be proud that you like hedgehogs. You can be proud that you feed the birds. You can be proud that you're managing your churchyard with wildlife in mind. Don't hide away. We need people to be as visible as possible, showing people this is the right way forward. We all have to take action. So we've heard that word a lot today, action. We've heard 2030 as well. So we're going to all hopefully aim towards that. But I always find these sort of things really, really inspiring. So, these sort of gatherings usually make me quite emotional. I usually am a crying wreck at the back of the rooms, just seeing so many people coming together for a common cause. It's just so, so inspiring. Now, don't be dismayed by the amount of paperwork I've got on here. You're like, oh my goodness, she's never going to get through it. So, why are churchyards important? I mean, it's already been mentioned as by the Bishop that, we've lost about 98% of our unimproved grassland since the Second World War. So for many churchyards, the churchyard itself is the last remnant piece of unimproved grassland for a parish. So that small piece of grass that might surround the church is vitally important, because as an unimproved grassland, it has a lot of other species associated with it. And in that parish, it might be, as we've already said, the last remnants. So for us, having those unimproved grasslands out there, remember 98% potentially lost since the Second World War, approximately 1,800 churchyards across the whole of Norfolk. And those churchyards form what's known as stepping stones within the county. So we've got a beautiful area that we are in here at the moment. Not far away we have Clyde Marshes, which is one of our 16 nature reserves that we manage across the county, and that's a core wildlife area. And what we'd like to see is that the whole of Norfolk becomes a fantastic environmental network where wildlife can move from place to place. So you've got your core areas for wildlife, those national nature reserves, the special sites of scientific interest. Then between those you have linkages through wildlife corridors, and those wildlife corridors might be hedgerows, they might be verges, they could be the river networks that go across, but those core wildlife areas are connected. And then within that we have the stepping stones, and just mentioned before, those 800 churchyards are really important stepping stones within our landscape. So they are the places which are important for wildlife in their own right. So while we were setting up this morning, fantastic meadows that are the wildflower areas that are managed in the churchyard by Robin and Rachel Hamilton and the other teams. And, so we've got all these beautiful flowers. But then we had red kite flying overhead, had a swift going into just above the doorway into its nest site. There was just a buzz going around the churchyard. So within those stepping stones, you have wildlife that can use it in its own right and will, produce there and growing population. But you've also got stepping stones which allow wildlife to move from one core area as to another. And as climate change is moving so rapidly and wildlife isn't able to adapt, we need to give wildlife the opportunity to move. So as a habitat becomes inhospitable, it's able to easily move from one place to the next where it can find somewhere it can survive. So this is our Living Landscapes plan for Norfolk. We have Living Landscapes areas, which is our project areas, but I should have just put the dots of the churchyards on there, and suddenly you see all those stepping stones that are there and helping us with that environmental network. So what I was going to do is just sort of highlight some of the wildlife associated with churchyards, and some of them you've probably got, you'll be like, oh yeah, we've got that, oh yeah, we've got that, oh she hasn't mentioned that. So, you know, but I just wanted to show you some of them. And again, we're going in with that word action. So, you know, what can you do to, if you haven't got them, to get them into your churchyard? Now for us, we're slightly obsessed in my team with flowers and plants. You know, we've already mentioned that the churchyards are a stronghold for our unimproved grassland. And you'll be absolutely bored of me saying that by the end of this. But it's so, so important to stress that your grassland in your churchyard are those wildflower meadows that we have lost. And, you know, you've got them just here. So for us at NWT, churchyards are the single most important refuge for 5/6 wildflowers, which are typical of old meadows. And they all have around 50% of their population in churchyards over large areas of the county. So 6 plants have 50% of their original native population. Now, one of them is oxeye daisy. Now, you'll be like, hang on a minute. Oxeye daisy's everywhere at the moment. It's making the whole of the county look like it's covered in snow. Yes, but those are ones that have probably been spread by seed. They've been brought in by seed. Whereas the oxeye daisies we have in churchyards are the original native population. So I'm just putting that out there as well now. Oh, I flicked it. Right. So one of the species, so these are just quick ones. So when we go out and do churchyard surveys, we're looking for some key plants within the churchyard. And one of them is meadow saxifrage. It's actually in the rose family. It's not a saxifrage at all. Flowers really early, so from April to June. So we always try and start surveying churchyards in early spring, because a lot of these species will be been and gone before you even realise. So meadow saxifrage, beautiful flower, probably about this big, and has sort of like this beautiful white flower head with a saxifrage-like leaf at the bottom. The next one, you'll be like, oh yeah, cowslips. So cowslips, there's been real beautiful cowslips that are around. April to May, they're flowering. Green crinkle texture and tongue-like leaves low to the ground. We all know what a cowslip looks like. So yeah, again, we're looking out for cowslips. We look out for pignut too. So pignut is has umbels, has umbrella-shaped leaf head, flower head. It's part of the carrot family, and if anyone knows cow parsley, so it's the same family, but is more delicate than that as well. And again, this is flowering from May to June. You wouldn't believe how excited Lucy, my colleague, and I get excited when we go into a churchyard and we see pignut flowering. We're like, this is showing us we've got something special here. And then we have burnet saxifrage. Burnet saxifrage is neither a burnet or saxifrage. Again, it's a carrot family. Now, this flowers really, really late, July to September. And I remember once surveying a churchyard in Norfolk, And the congregation, the community of that linked to that churchyard were just so excited about being part of the, encouraging wildlife into their churchyard. But we weren't finding anything overly special. And you were just like, obviously everything's special, I should say. But right at the end of the surveying season, we went in and suddenly we found burnt saxifrage just under one side of the windows. And it was like, my goodness, you've got burnt saxifrage. You know how special it is. So burnt saxifrage flowers quite late, July to September. Again, part of the carrot family. Again, more delicate than cow parsley. Now, I should hasten to add, we do have ID sheets, which can be taken away, or they're online as well. And then finally, I always think it's quite appropriate to include this one as well, because ladies' bedstraw, which the folklore has it associated with the Virgin Mary as well. So there's some wonderful folklore associated with this. Bedstraw family, square stem, small flowers, leaves in a whirl. Beautiful, beautiful, bright yellow as well. And in one of the other folklores that are associated with it was that in the olden days it would have been used to stuff mattresses or pillows for ladies who were about to give birth. I always think it was a way of getting rid of the husbands while the lady was about to give birth. Go and stuff this pillowcase with ladies' bedstraw, just get out of my way as well. So these are the key plants that we are looking for in a churchyard, but there are a few more as well, such as Germander speedwell, knapweeds, violets, mouse ear, hawkweed, primroses, self-heals. I mean, any plants that you find in your churchyard, any wildflowers, are just so, so special. And, as that famous saying goes, there's no such thing as a weed. It's just a plant in the wrong place. And, our churchyards, as we walk through, when we started to get really into botany, I had to call myself a birder. I was always looking at birds. As soon as I started to get into the Churchyard Conservation Scheme, learning more about surveying plants, I haven't looked up since. I now find myself bending over all the time, walking through the city, going, oh, what's that? Seeing what the plants grow everywhere. Now, it should be hastened to say that these flowers will all survive if they're cut regularly and the cuttings are taken off. So when we're walking through, we're experts at IDing plants where the churchyard has just been mown the day before. So we're not too scared about doing that. So these plants were perennial, so you can cut them. They don't need to necessarily set seed. They'll be there. So you can continue to cut your churchyard, take them off, and you'll see them hanging on, growing in there. The issue that you get is when churchyards are left to grow, and then they sort of like the wildflowers are pushed out by more robust grasses, and the grasses are allowed to grow, and then perhaps they're not cut at the right time, or the grass collapses, or when they're cut, the cuttings are left on. And then when the cuttings are left on, then what can happen is extra nutrients goes into the grass, into the ground, and then those wildflowers that lead poor, nutrient-free areas to grow are just swamped and can't compete as well. So that's the plants, okay? So we've just thrown out a few there that you may find. Just to say that Lucy and Rachel's at the back here, and Rachel's written Wild Guide's book on plant ID. It's over there. So we can show you some of the plants that are already out there. If you're not sure and you want to see them in person, we can show you them in the churchyard. So mammals, I'm just going to highlight one, but of course there's so many mammals that can be associated around here. But the one I've picked is the hedgehog. Now, we all know hedgehogs have been in the news, very recently. They are vulnerable now. They're on the red list for mammals. They are acknowledged as being a vulnerable species. There's been a significant decline in them. But there is so much that can be done to sort of help and support hedgehogs. I mean, it would be an absolute shame if we lost one of our most loved mammals by not taking action to help them. And, within a churchyard is a fantastic place. They do have a stronghold in sort of towns, in cities, in sort of places where people are. In the wider countryside, there's been a greater decline. But within a churchyard, you know, there's so much that you can do for them. And the key thing is about providing food, but not feeding them, you know, it's about providing food naturally as well. So creating things like log piles, dead hedge at wells next to sea. We worked with the church congregation there, and we created, you know, you always do a bit of churchyard maintenance. You've got a lot of sticks, you know, where do all these sticks come from? So it's about taking those sticks and making what's known as a dead hedge, which you can weave and make look really nice at the back of the churchyard. And then they become fantastic habitats for lots of invertebrates and lots of food for your local hedgehog. So log piles, dead hedges, having that compost heap as well. Many churchyards will have in a corner, quiet corner of the churchyard, a compost heap. So an open compost heap which will allow access by animals are fantastic for hedgehogs. With the hot summers that we're getting, maybe not this year, but the hot summers that we're getting as well, providing a dish of water. So I'm seeing more and more churchyards leaving little dishes of water out. So, you know, it's vitally important for hedgehogs as well. But the key thing really is about creating access. A lot of churchyards are surrounded by beautiful flint walls. Keep, you know, if at all possible, allowing an access point which is no bigger than a CD size hole, somewhere within your church grounds, so hedgehogs can move freely in and out. I put a new fence in my garden a few years ago, and the man who put the fence in looked at me when I said, right, now can you cut 2 holes in the fence, please? He's like, what? But dare I say, this probably makes me sound really sad, that one of my proudest moments in my life was when I saw a hedgehog using my hedgehog hole. I was just so chuffed, it was unbelievable. So allowing wildlife to be able to move freely. And remember, with that hedgehog hole, that it means that frogs, toads can come in and out as well. So just creating that space. Of course, there's lots of different animal boxes that you can put up as well. Hedgehog boxes, bat boxes. You know, there's lots and lots of different types of boxes you can also put up as well. If you're putting up a hedgehog box, though, it's really important to sort of hide it. Don't make it too obvious. Hide it away so it can peep nice and quiet. Key thing as well is that hedgehogs have favourite leaves of trees. So they like to build their nests with tree leaves to make them nice and snug, particularly in the winter time. They want to keep nice and warm during the winter. So their favourite leaf, and who knew it, are oak leaves and beech leaves. So they hold their shape. So when hedgehogs collect them and move them into their nest boxes, they will hold the shape and will really compact and keep the hedgehog warm as well. And a lot of churchyards do have oak trees within them and do have beech leaves. So, you know, when you're tidying up the churchyard of leaves, you know, maybe move some of them away, but if you can create leaf piles within the churchyard at the back again, that's fantastic for hedgehogs. I'm sorry, I keep pointing the wrong way. Now, we've got here butterflies, but I'm going to also throw in the words and other pollinators. So we know that unfortunately, bumblebees and solitary bees have really been declining as well. So, you know, thinking about what pollinators you can sort of provide food source for and habitat for is really important. So we've already mentioned the churchyard is an unimproved grassland. So the flowers that grow within it will be a fantastic nectar-rich source for pollinators. But also, if you can have a nettle patch somewhere, a lot of butterflies, their caterpillars, rely heavily on nettles, and also an area of long grass in the summer. So I've just got 3 butterflies here that you might see. So this is the orange tip butterfly, which is classed as the harbinger of spring. I'm just going to quickly throw that out there. I'm going to give a Norfolk man a bit of a plug. Robert Marsham, who was born in Stratton-Straulas in the 1700s, he was a fan of wildlife. He used to record the 27 indicators of spring, and he did that religiously. And one of the species he would record was when he saw orange tip butterfly. The other one was when oak leaves furled, when he saw his first swallow. When he passed away, his family continued to do that recording for 150 years. When we were then starting to look at climate change, is it happening? The climate change scientists of the world, where did they look to? They looked to Norfolk, and they looked to Robert Marsham and his family's records, showing because suddenly we had 150 years of wildlife records that could be compared with the climate of the time. And so we could see how climate was impacting wildlife as well. So I'm just putting it out there, wildlife recording is exceptionally important, and mapping the wildlife that you have in your churchyard is really important. We might think the species is common, but the records are exceptionally important, whatever you have. So if you do have a hedgehog, go onto Hedgehog Map, map your hedgehog. If you've got Swift, go onto the Swift Mapper and map your swifts. It all helps us to build a picture of what's happening to our wildlife nationally. So orange-tipped butterfly, just quickly going back, out May and June, hopefully, if the weather's nice, likes garlic mustard and cuckoo flower, so often seen in churchyards. Then you have the browns. So again, seen in July and August, they like to use a range of grasses. And then you have, as well, another brown, the ringlet butterfly. I'm sorry, flashing. The ringlet butterfly, again, likes those range of grasses. And you have as well the, sorry, I'm struggling here, the peacock, which is much of the year, beautiful scene, much of the year on warm, sunny days. And I remember being in the church, fantastic church in Great Yarmouth. It's a county wildlife site, so you have national nature reserves, you have special sites of scientific interest. The next level down are county wildlife sites. And in Norfolk, we have 5 churchyards that are county wildlife sites. One of them is the fantastic church in Great Yarmouth. The other one is the Rosary in Norwich, and also Earlham Cemetery in Norwich as well. Absolutely beautiful places, amazing wildlife. By the way, if you ever want to see the fattest squirrels in the world, go to Great Yarmouth. The churchyard there is quite impressive. So this butterfly here can be seen on knapweed. You know, butterflies love sunny places, and in a churchyard we often have a sunny side to the church, and you know, so if you're allowed to can allow some flowers to grow in the sunny side, south side of the churchyard, getting the most light. I've already mentioned about providing a nettle patch, so a nettle patch in your corner of your churchyard. And what you can do is with your nettle patch is sort of cut it at 3 different, so you have a nettle patch, but cut it at 3 different times. So maybe you'll cut one in July, then you might cut one in September, and then you might leave one to overwinter. So you're not sort of removing a food source straight away. And if you want to put up one habitat box for an animal, probably the best one you can use, which is most successful, are the solitary bee homes. So the solitary bee homes, for those people that aren't aware of them, they're the boxes that have lots of bamboo or holes in them as well. And some of them can be really fantastic and really sculptural. So you can have sort of like even putting a silver birch log, for example, upright in a part of your churchyard, and then drilling holes in them in a sunny position will bring solitary bees in as well. So ideally the holes are about 15 centimetres to 30 centimetres long, and so the bees can lay their eggs in there, and ideally they're 2 millimetre to 10 millimetres wide as well to let them in. But yeah, solitary bee homes, absolutely amazing, but in a sunny position. Then just quickly, amphibians and reptiles as well. You know, we're thinking amphibians and reptiles associated with church. How does that work? Now, obviously, I know of one churchyard in Norfolk that does have a pond, but obviously most churchyards don't. But of course, a lot of frogs and toads don't spend much of their time actually in ponds. They're actually outside. So if you've got a water body nearby, then they may use the churchyard for shelter, food, and to overwinter. And again, like so many species, creating dead wood pile, having compost heats, having a little bit of a scrubby area, not too much at the back, you know, will all help them to sort of live in your churchyard as well. Excuse me. And then these fantastic creatures, which are the slow worm and the common lizard. The slow worm is actually a legless lizard, so it's not a snake. Really under-recorded in Norfolk. We're not totally sure how many we do actually have. But slow worms are often associated with compost heaps as well, so that's where they'll lay their eggs. And so, you know, a compost heap with perhaps a bit of carpet on the top, you know, lift the carpet quietly, slowly, and you may just be lucky to find a slow worm in there. So again, particularly like the compost heap and the warm stone crevices. So again, in Norfolk, churchyards surrounded by fantastic flint walls with those little holes in, absolutely fantastic habitat for the common lizard as well. So again, it just appears, it's not rocket science. Wood piles, compost heaps, and again for lizards, a pile of stones, you know, in a sunny spot where they can come and bask. Right, and birds. Right, here we go. So with birds, I mean, we've got some famous residents in Norfolk that like to take up residence in church towers. One of them in particular I'm thinking of is the peregrine. So we have some fantastic, you know, in Norwich Cathedral, it's like EastEnders there, but with what's happening between the male and the female, and when the female gets ousted out and another female comes in, it's all happening there. And if you haven't been to Norwich Cathedral to see at this time of year, the British Trust for Ornithology have a peregrine watch there, and you know, the webcam has got ridiculous amount of hits. It's something like 50,000 hits the webcam has every year. But our churchyards are key habitats for many different bird species. I mean, we have here robin, dunnock, songthrush, goldcrest, blue tit, crow and blackbird as well. So things like the songthrush, you know, when I was a child growing up, in the back of my garden we had songthrush there, and we had a songthrush anvil. So a place where the songthrush would break the shells of snails to be able to access the snail. I'd love to know how many children get the opportunity to see a songthrush anvil. Here in the churches we were setting up this morning, beautiful songthrush singing, likes to repeat itself 3 times, just continually singing here. But actually that's quite a rarity nowadays. So things like songthrushes, you know, they love churchyards with short grass. That's where they'll go and hunt along with blackbirds as well. And they'll also be looking for those snails and those slugs as well. Putting up nest boxes, brilliant, you know, and a really engaging thing, an activity to do with children as well. British Trust for Ornithology and the RSPB has a huge amount of information about what bird boxes to put up where, you know, from blue tit boxes to house sparrow terraces to the open fronted boxes for robins and also spotted flycatchers. Variety, that's what it's all about, creating variety, a mosaic of diversity. Some other species that will utilise the church itself. So for many birds, you know, this is a fantastic church made by humans, but to a peregrine falcon, to a swift, this is a natural access to a stone, you know, stone cliff. This is the tower is its equivalent of a cliff face. And in Norfolk, where we don't have those big geological features, then it makes sense that this is where peregrines are going to head to. They're going to head to those church towers. So already mentioned about the peregrines, but up here as well, we've got the swifts, we've got swallows and house martins. And of course in Norfolk, we're really lucky to have a really good, strong population of different owls, including barn owl, little owl and tawny owl as well. And yeah, I have fond memories of going to one church and being shown by a church warden a cluster of owl pellets just on the outside of a church tower. And it's like, this is where the barn owl comes to eat and regurgitate its food every night. You know, it's just those little indicators. So with the barn owls and the tawny owls and the little owls, obviously they're feeding, well, the tawny owls and the barn owls are feeding on small mammals. So creating those meadow areas will then make a home for field voles, which is a really important source of food for those bigger raptors as well. And if you wanted, so like for a church here, where we're looking out on fantastic freshwater marsh or rough pasture, you know, that's perfect barn owl habitat for hunting. So is there an opportunity to put up a barn owl box somewhere? And in Norfolk, we have a gentleman, in particular in South Norfolk, that will go out and support people putting up barn owl boxes locally as well. Now, I'm just going to quickly go on to this, swifts. It's become a bit of an obsession of mine in the last year or so. During COVID, a lady who lives in Norwich called Caroline Spinks, she just said, that's it, I'm going to set up the Norwich Swift Network. And in 1 year, she put up 63 nest boxes. She's now been working really closely with churches as well across Norfolk to help them to make their church towers suitable for swifts. And she's worked with the cathedral as well. So swifts, we've seen 51% decline from 1995 to 2015. Interestingly, in Holland, that decline hasn't happened. And one of the reasons being, we believe, is because their habitats are protected and they have swift bricks installed into roofs and things like that. So, you know, in Norfolk, we have some fantastic swift projects going on. And in a couple of, I think next month, we're actually going to Aylsham with the Aylsham Swift project there to show people how the church there has been working with them to encourage swifts into their church tower. But what you're looking at is creating nest boxes in sort of like behind the louvres of the church tower as well. They're perfect lodgers, by the way. They don't make a mess. Obviously, they've got that really amazing scream, which to me is a real, it means summer to me. When I hear the swifts screaming through the village where I live, it's like, yeah, they're back, they're making an impact. And, you know, to think of a summer where you don't hear screaming swifts, it would be devastating, absolutely devastating. So, you know, if you want information about how you can attract swifts in there, then please get in touch with the Norwich Swift Network, Caroline, and, you know, she'll be only happy. Or to talk to people like the Aylsham Swift project to see how they're getting on. And then finally, I'm just going to raise awareness here of spotted flycatchers, which I mentioned earlier. Unfortunately for spotted flycatchers, you know, they've declined by 79%. It's in 1960 to 1998. But churchyards now are one of the best places to see them in Norfolk. And they like open-fronted boxes, and they like sort of ivy-covered trees or walls as well. And, you know, really amazing. I can't think about the last time I saw a spotted flycatcher in Norfolk. Unfortunately, it was probably about 5 years ago now. We're getting there. And then fungi. So fungi, churchyards are absolutely important, really important habitat for quite a few different fungi. We've got 3,500 species recorded in Norfolk, and churchyards provide 3 key habitats: mown grass, short vegetation under trees, and of course old trees as well. So those 3 habitats really, really make them sort of really suitable for a number of key species. Things like earth tongues, wax caps as well. You know, if you see earth tongues or you see wax caps in your churchyard, please do let the county recorder know, because this is really an important indicator of an unimproved grassland as well, and they love a wax cap. So again, wax caps, very, very, they're the beautiful, really, really shiny fungi that's, you know, very, very, very distinctive. And of course, we all know how important churchyards are for lichens and other stonework plants. So many churchyards have well over 100 different lichens growing in their churchyard. Now, to the untrained eye, like myself, I'll go out and say, oh yeah, you've got one. Oh no. If you're a lichen expert, you'll be out there and you'll be like, just, you know, you could be called, you know, around 100. They grow exceptionally slowly. You know, you're talking 0.5 millimetre a year. So the lichens that you're seeing in your churchyard, which are also a good indicator of clean air, you know, can be really, really, really old. So as we say here, many plants rely on bare stone on which to grow and draw minerals, as Norfolk has little natural rocky outcrops. Old walls and tombstones are essential for their survival. Lichens are a combination of fungi and algae or bacteria that provides each other with benefits of survival, and around 250 of the 500 Norfolk lichen species are found in churchyards. So if you do have to do any restoration work on your churchyard, one of the things that we ask with regard to stone work plants is that you don't wipe out the whole colony, that you do keep some there so they can then recolonise as well. But some other things to look out for in the churchyard are things like black spleenwort, maidenhair grass, wall rue, they've all got great names, haven't they? But there's all these little species that are growing in and out of the masonry. Just to hasten to add that these have very short root systems, so they don't damage the mortar or the structure of the church. Right, the veteran trees, very quickly. So again, I'm having trouble here. There we go. So again, veteran trees, you know, the huge number of ancient trees within the churchyard. Some of them can be really, really old. There's a fantastic ancient tree map as well, so if you wouldn't mind going on and sort of marking your trees on that as well. Planting new trees, though, what we'd be really keen to stress is it'd be great to plant new trees, memorial trees, to the edges of churchyards. And the reason being is because they obviously cast a lot of shade, trees. And with churchyards, you often want them to be quite open and sunny for the unimproved grassland as well. So planting new trees is sort of like, perhaps look at the churchyards as a whole and think, right, okay, where would it be okay to cast shade? Is it going to be to the detriment of other species that are growing around? Right, so the Churchyard Conservation Scheme, Lucy Seeley, who will be at our stand there, has sort of oversees our Churchyard Conservation Scheme. And what we do is we support churchyards to sort of look at how they can manage their churchyard for people and for wildlife as well. We have resources. We are updating all of these resources, and last week we got a brand new website, so over the next year or so we're going to be putting on more resources there. But we have an information pack, which we have some of them here today. But one of the key things that we love to do is to know what you've got in your churchyard already. So we offer a free service, and that's to come out and to survey your churchyard. We have 13 fantastic volunteers who support Lucy with going out and doing the churchyard surveys. And so what we're doing is we're looking for the best places to we're looking for an area of the churchyard where it's the most diverse for flora as well. As I say, we're very good at identifying plants that have been cut quite recently, so it doesn't necessarily mean leaving your grass uncut. And then what we do is we provide a sketch map, and we also highlight where the key species are in your churchyard, and we also provide management. Every churchyard is different, okay? And so people often ask us for generic advice on how to manage a churchyard as a wildflower meadow. It's really hard to say, so we prefer to be able to say, can we come out and see you? Let us look at your churchyard. Let's see what works best for you. But one of the key things we do say is start small and then work up, because everybody thinks, oh yeah, we'll leave half the church, we'll turn it into a meadow, it'll be great. And then suddenly, so you've got a beautiful blooming meadow, it looks amazing, it's really diverse, and then all of a sudden you're like, right, okay, we've now got to try and cut this. Who's going to help us to cut it? Oh, and hang on, we've now got to rake it all off. Where are we going to put the cuttings? Witherton Church is an absolutely fantastic example of community involvement with the churchyard and its management. So here you've already seen the beautiful areas left to grow. And those areas are, what we love to say is, really think about where you're going to put your wildflower meadow. Sort of like you want to probably, if there's areas that the graves are tended, then you know people may be upset if suddenly they come back and they find that there's lots of long grass or plants growing there. So it's like try and work out where the best place to put your meadow is. Then what you're looking at is, just as they do here, is to have those paths mowed through. So you're showing people this is where we're allowing wildflowers to grow, but we're still managing the churchyard for people as well, so you can access it. And it's done really lovely here. So the key thing we're saying is, right, okay, we've identified these areas in your churchyard where you might want a meadow, but what we're thinking of is, what's your capacity though? How can you cut this at the end, and how can you rake off? And I'll give you an example of Witherton. I came here once to help here. In September, they cut their meadow in September, and the local pub provides the cider and the drinks. The local bakeries provides the cheese, the foods such as bread and pork pies. The local Bingham cheese lady provides the cheese, and they get 20 people to come along and to help rake off the cuttings. And then what they do is the local farmer will dispose of the cuttings for them. So it's a really wonderful example of the community coming together. It's absolutely fantastic. I've got 1 minute left. Thank you very much. Okay, so just to say, I will just say about when to cut. Now, when I say this, it's going to be a big intake of breath. It's really hard to tell you when is the right time to cut your churchyard. We aim at, if you're in a churchyard, we'd sort of like encourage people to do perhaps a cut in July and then take off, and then a cut in October time as well. But we've got Richard here, and Richard is... runs Wild Sives, and he's an amazing botanist, and what he doesn't know about meadow management is not worth knowing. But it's about creating are you ready for this, a mosaic. So it might be, I'm going to cut some of my meadow in July, and then we'll leave some of it for August and for September, and we'll cut it bit by bit. So don't feel you have to cut it all at the same time. In fact, leaving some of your grassland to, meadow, your grass areas, sort of like cut on at different times, is really fantastic. So if anybody wants to talk to us more about, what to do with managing your meadow and how to cut it, then we are around. Talk to Richard here. Talk to Rachel, just at the back here, who is a fantastic botanist. I'm just going to give a plug to Rachel. Rachel and two of her colleagues have produced a book. It goes on sale tomorrow, and it's the Wild Guides book, and it's the British and Irish Wildflower and Plants Guide, and we have some copies for sale over with Lucy as well. So this will show you 700 of the more commoner plants that you can help you to ID them as well. So, just quickly, if there's key messages to take away here, is Norfolk Wildlife Trust Churchyard Conservation Scheme is here to help you. We offer that free survey advice, and we offer free management advice as well. So please do get in touch with us. We're churchyards@norfolkwildlifetrust.org.uk. Please help us with nature's recovery. Help us by creating those stepping stones that are so vitally important for wildlife. But we are here to help you too. And just to say, we have now started running a training programme for churchyards and church congregations. So on Monday, we're out at Wroxham Church showing about how they manage their meadows. We've got one coming up with in Aylsham, as we've already said, about swifts and how to cater for swifts in your churchyard. And Lucy has information about that as well. Now, during your lunch hour, you're going to be at the Witherton Bell, one of my favourite pubs. And we are out and about there to ask any questions while you're waiting for your lunch. Just to say, Louisa, my colleague, she's at the back. She's been working with churches on encouraging them to engage with children and within the wildlife, and so she's got some activities to show you there. Then we've got Richard from Wild Sives there to show you about siving. We've run a number of sive workshops in churchyards because they're a really good tool to use. And then, of course, Lucy's here as well. So without further ado, I will hand over to Saul, and he can sort you out your lunch, which is really important. Thank you.